Hello, viewers, and welcome to The Common Caveat. I am your host, Matthew Sabatine, and on this channel, we discuss consciousness, culture, psychobiology, and spiritual experiences in relevance to Jesus Christ. If you enjoy the mysteries of faith and science, then join me in this wild ride. Today, I want to discuss a 2005 report titled The Out-of-Body Experience, Disturbed Self-Processing at the Temporo-Parietal Junction. It was written by Olaf Blanke and Shahar Arzy, who are researchers in the field of neuroscience. I apologize if I am mispronouncing their names. Anyway, I shall proceed. They assembled reliable data concerning out-of-body experiences. The abbreviation for that is OBE, which OBEs involve the feeling of separation from the physical body and viewing oneself from outside of the body. Their data seems to strongly support the premise that out-of-body experiences, or OBEs, can be intentionally induced in patients. However, their ending conclusion that OBEs are illusory is questionable because it does not cleanly follow from the available data and evidence. This seems to be a commonplace non-sequitur fallacy in conversations about this topic. I think that deserves closer examination, and that is what I intend to do today. Later, I will discuss how that non sequitur fallacy is exposed by the work of Janice Miner Holden, a quote, near death experience and transpersonal pioneer researcher who has over 50 refereed journal publications and over 100 national and international presentations, end quote. Lastly, I want to be clear that 2 Corinthians 5, verses 6 through 8 of the New Testament of the Bible is a core part of my view on this matter, saying, quote, "So we are always confident, knowing that while we are at home in the body, we are present from the Lord, for we walk by faith, not by sight. We are confident, yes, well pleased rather to be absent from the body and to be present with the Lord," end quote. So let's go ahead and dive into Blanke and Arzy's work. The two authors remark that OBEs challenge our ordinary intuitions about having a self and a body that are spatially unified into a single entity holding the experience. The temporo-parietal junction, or TPJ, is responsible for coherence in self-perception and body awareness. If it becomes unsettled in its process of coherently combining information from various sensory modalities, such as vision, hearing, touch, smell, taste, etc., it cannot properly represent the body's position in space. This will also affect a person phenomenologically and cognitively speaking, thus generating the authors what they call, quote, illusory reduplication, illusory self-location, illusory perspective, and illusory agency that are experienced as an OBE, end quote. However, the word illusion seems to be dubious in explaining the basis of OBEs. Surely, anecdotes about OBEs include features that disagree with the physicalist and materialist conclusions. But the word illusion, which I define here as an interpretation of sensory signals that disagree with actual reality, cannot describe what is actually happening here if Janice Miner Holden is correct in her professional work analyzing some cases in which people with OBEs had veridical or accurate perceptions of what was happening during their experience. I will discuss Janice Miner Holden's work later, but for now I just want to clarify some things. By summarizing disembodiment and autoscopy, which is seeing one's body from an elevated perspective, based on a quote from Harvey J. Irwin's book called Flight of Mind, he says, quote, "I was in bed and about to fall asleep when I had the distinct impression that I was at the ceiling level looking down at my body in the bed. I was very startled and frightened. Immediately afterward, I felt that I was consciously back in the bed again," end quote. It seems reasonable to say that OBEs consistently occur across cultures, as suggested by a number of professionals. Blanke cites many professionals in the field of OBE research who have further suggested that atypical neural activity must be the cause for these OBEs as altered representations of self. Between the late 1950s and early 2000s, various professionals have reported cases in which OBE patients with brain damage involved both the right and left hemispheres of the brain and all four lobes, such as the frontal, temporal, parietal, and occipital lobes. Epileptic seizures and migraine headaches have been included in the etiology. Etiology is the study of causes and origins of medical conditions. Two OBEs were attributed to a dysembryoplastic neuroepithelial tumor, abbreviated as DNET, which is infrequent, non-cancerous, and stemming from the formation of anomalous neural tissue. Another OBE was attributed to focal electrical stimulation, which are currents applied for research and therapeutic purposes. If there is any temptation to hastily conclude that OBEs can be causally boiled down to brain damage, you should consider the fact that Olaf Blanke and other professionals admit that OBEs are reported among healthy people along with neurological patients. How can the cause for an issue in healthy people be the same cause for the same issue in unhealthy people? I think that is an important question to ask here. Olaf Blanke and others have found all OBE patients to have episodic disturbances in the vestibular system, which is responsible for maintaining balance. It manifests sudden vertigo, dizziness, and unsteadiness. Gunther Grusser and Michael Landis, if I'm pronouncing their names right, from 1991 suggested this as a possible cause. Blanke mentions perception of gravity and the otolithic organs in the inner ear that detect linear acceleration and head tilt. These things are likely relevant to the feelings of being elevated or inverted in the air, beyond the immediate physical self. Blanke writes that such experiences can occur in healthy people who journey to outer space or participate in the microgravity phase of parabolic flights. Think of people flying in jets, fighter jets if you prefer. This involves a zero gravity environment generated by high angle maneuvers that involve free falling and the appearance of weightlessness. Such a thing may explain that the patient's feeling of being inverted in extrapersonal space. So we will be getting to Janice Miner Holden's work in just a minute, so just hold your horses, folks. It seems that Blanke is hoping that OBEs will have a mechanism or mechanisms similar to what can be found in paroxysmal visual body illusions, which involve distorted perception of limb movements and transformations, and supernumerary phantom limbs that involve sensory input from non-existent limbs. This is supported by the fact that electrical stimulation to the right temporo-parietal junction, or TPJ, produced the OBEs and illusions of transformed body parts. It is worth noting that the OBE patients of Blanke and other researchers were lying down, which tells me that they intended safety for their subjects. Blanke seeks a plausible phenomenological link between OBEs and visual body part illusions. He settles with the suggestion that OBEs result from proprioceptive, tactile, and visual information failing to combine into a central representation of one's own body. Furthermore, they suggest that OBEs involve sudden, transient, or temporal disturbances occurring at the boundary between the temporal and the parietal lobes of the brain. So now let's get into accurate perceptions from people with OBEs. So if OBEs are essentially illusory, we should be unable to find veridical or accurate NDE perceptions. But on page 186 of the Handbook of Near-Death Experiences, Janice Miner Holden provides a definition, saying, quote, veridical NDE perception refers to any perception visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and so on, that a person reports having experienced during one's NDE and that is later corroborated as having corresponded to material consensus reality, end quote. To exemplify this, Holden mentions a story I have heard repeatedly. The story goes like this. A girl saw her stepfather while she was unconscious. She saw him grabbing a candy bar from a vending machine, in spite of himself being a nutrition enthusiast. She later told her mother after becoming conscious again that the mother was able to corroborate that what she saw was true. These are called veridical NDE perceptions because they were accurately achieved without sensory organs and the principles of logic. Holden discusses the apparently non-physical veridical NDE perception, abbreviated as AVP. Its definition can be difficult to distinguish from veridical NDE perceptions. However, AVPs seem to really emphasize that a patient's reported knowledge of specific events and objects should be impossible due to the patient's physical condition and position at the time. An example of an AVP, according to Holden, is when an NDE-er is unexpectedly faced with a loved one who he or she thought was alive, but in fact had passed away around the time of the near-death experiencer's experience, and the near-death experiencer does not learn about that passing until after the NDE. In response to AVP critic Keith Augustine, who argues that OBE anecdotes are hallucinatory, Holden gathered narratives published prior to the widespread recognition of this paranormal phenomenon that began in 1975. She also gathered narratives published between 1975 and 2006 with a heavy focus on, quote, scholarly periodical literature, end quote, detailing in-depth analyses of NDEs. She included case studies as well, but excluded anything not peer-reviewed and not giving NDEs a systematic handling. This means that she removed all post-1975 fluff intended for the general public instead of specialists. On page 193 and 196 of the Handbook of Near-Death Experiences, she says, quote, I found a total of 107 such cases gleaned from 39 publications by 37 different authors or author teams. Then I analyzed each anecdote for various factors. Categorizing anecdotes, I found 89 material, 14 trans material, and 4 that included perception of both aspects. Anecdotes in the material category included a variety of corroborated details of NDEers, rescues, resuscitations, and other events during their NDEs, including NDEers facilitating the recovery of lost objects. Anecdotes in the trans material category consisted primarily of the experiencer encountering someone in the NDE whom they did not know at the time was deceased. It also more rarely included cases of acquiring other information, such as the location of secretly hidden documents and of spontaneously healing. The quote ends there. She separated the anecdotes into one category of those corroborated by only the near-death experiencer and another category of those corroborated by human witnesses to the event, whether they be practitioners during the event or medical records. The anecdotes were further classified according to being totally accurate, 1, totally being accurate, 2, partly accurate - inaccurate, and 3, mostly or totally inaccurate. Holden provides a table outlining her data, which became difficult for me to read, so I have tried to convert this as best as I can. So from that table, I learned that of her 107 cases she found, complete accuracy was found among 13 cases in which the near-death experiencer alone reports on what they witnessed during their rescue, resuscitation, and assistance of reclaiming lost objects. None from that category were found to be partly or completely inaccurate. In the category of human witnesses, per report of the experiencer, complete accuracy was found in 38 cases, while some inaccuracy was found in only 2 cases. In the category of objective sources, which could include medical records, complete accuracy was found among 35 cases. Some inaccuracy was found among 4 cases, and only 1 case was found totally inaccurate. Anecdotes of the transmaterial category that include seeing a deceased loved one that they did not know had passed prior to the NDE. Those of the experiencer-only category involved 3 completely accurate cases and only 1 that was partly inaccurate. 7 cases with other human witnesses were found to be completely accurate and none that had inaccuracies, while only 1 case was completely inaccurate and 6 were completely accurate in the category of objective sources. So finally, Holden writes, and I quote her here, "To Augustine's credit, I found only 1 case involving an apparent error that he had not included in his review. Nevertheless, cases involving AVP clearly outnumbered substantially those involving erroneous perception. In particular, whereas 8% of material and 11% of transmaterial cases involved even some error, 38% of material and 33% of transmaterial cases involved complete accuracy of perception that the authors corroborated through objective means." End quote. It is understandable for NDE critics to argue that anecdotes are flawed sources for supporting the premise that consciousness can operate apart from the brain, since the brain can still have life-sustaining functions in a lot of cases not involving cardiac arrest. Those patients could have the corporeal means for building perceptions of what was happening and maybe embellish their memories. Skeptics may rightfully cite the file drawer effect, arguing that NDEs with inaccuracies deserve to be labeled as hallucinatory and locked away as non-evidence for consciousness apart from the brain and a possible afterlife. However, the mountain of cases collected throughout the past 150 years amounts to something significant, behooving us to not simply dismiss these cases as mere hallucinations. If consciousness perception needs a body to communicate accuracies that satisfy the physicalist and materialist worldview, then no disembodied self should be able to report even a modicum or sliver of accuracy while unconscious, let alone be able to report accuracies that outnumber the inaccuracies. So, and I just want to go back to the passage of scripture that I had cited earlier to describe the headspace that I'm working in with here. So we are always confident, knowing that while we are at home in the body, we are absent from the Lord, for we walk by faith, not by sight. We are confident, yes, well pleased, rather to be absent from the body and to be present with the Lord. So if consciousness is separable from the body, as we see from this data, it's expectable that 2 Corinthians 5, 6 through 8 should be true. And with that, I just want to conclude this episode today. Thank you for watching, everybody, and have a wonderful day.